So I thought we'd do something a bit different today because, quite frankly, if I wanted to, I could probably fill this week just talking about Boris Johnson's problems. And while that would be, again, amusing for both me and you, I have said before I want to talk more about positive things on this channel as well as solutions to problems that we face in this country. I have said before, we face in this country a housing crisis. And the thing is, you can go back to like the early 2000s of when this started being talked of. We're in a housing crisis. This has been going on long enough to say that we are not just in a housing crisis. I personally believe we are but a few steps away from a housing disaster. So what do I mean by that? I think we could be entering a period where the price of basic housing becomes so expensive that people can't afford to move into new houses, let alone afford new houses. I think there is potentially another mortgage situation potentially brewing here in the UK, which again, tackle this all with the stagflation that we're facing, it may not turn out very well. Not only that, but you've got a massive problem at the moment with landlords. Landlord rents at the moment have gone up by at least £100. Again, couple this with the cost of living crisis. We are entering almost a perfect recipe to deal alone with housing. And as I've said before, landlords, especially in the UK here, are not part of the solution to solve this problem. They are part of the problem by themselves contributing to the housing crisis. So let's talk about how we could actually solve that. And one of those issues is cooperative housing. So we're going to go over this article because this explains what cooperative housing is and how it can really help to solve especially some of the most vulnerable people's problem, which is again housing in the UK. Housing should be looked on as something really critical that everyone needs in order to survive. So before we go diving into this article, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do support the channel that way. So on with this. This comes from The Guardian with the title of How Cooperative Housing Gave Me the Peace of Mind I'd Never Thought I'd Find. Like many of my millennial peers, I believed that I would be stuck in a doom loop of precarious housing forever, handing over huge proportions of my income every month to a landlord who happened to own the floor I was sleeping on. Across many countries and big cities in particular, the prospect of home ownership or even access to socially rented housing is a pipe dream. The median house prices have risen to more than 7 times the median incomes in the Anglo-Saxon economies. And in the UK, the proportion of 25 to 35-year-olds on middle incomes who own a home has plummeted to 2/3 to just 1/4 between 1996 to 2016. Meanwhile, the costs of renting from Sydney to San Francisco have soared. Then in June of 2021, I moved with my Danish partner into one of Copenhagen's many, I'm going to butcher this, Andelssolbølger. I've not pronounced that right. I'm terribly sorry to my Danish viewers. A cooperative owned block of flats where we neither have a landlord nor pay rent, and which is not subject to market prices. Today, about 7% of the Danish population live in a form of cooperatively owned housing, and it accounts for 1/3 of the housing stock in Copenhagen. It soon became clear to me that there's a lot other countries could learn. Rather than buy an apartment, people who live in the Andelssolbølger purchase a share in an association that owns the apartment building, equal to the value of the apartment. And the price of the 158 apartments that make up our cooperative have not increased much since it was first founded in 1975, meaning we could afford the deposit and the subsequent mortgage installments without support from our parents, even though we together were earning below the median income when we moved in. And we don't expect to make money on our apartment in the time that we live here. But we aren't losing anything through paying rents either. And if we move out, we will leave with roughly what we have put in over the years. As a member of the cooperative, we not only have an apartment to live in and a garden to share with our neighbours, but also a voice in the decisions about how the building and our common space, like the laundrette, are run. Once a year, we elect fellow residents to the cooperative's board, who then become responsible for overseeing building maintenance and responding to emergencies and the administration of new households moving in. The Anselborg system has its roots in the wider Danish cooperative movement, which began in the farming and consumer goods back in the 19th century. And in the post-war decades, housing cooperatives have flourished with the support of trade union groups and social democratic governments. And in the 1970s, a legal reform was introduced that granted tenants in the private rental sector the right of first choice to collectively buy their building if a landlord wanted to sell it. And by the 2000s, housings of the Anselborger have been established this way across the country, including the one we live in. And that would be by something I would love to see in this country, the right of first choice. So if a landlord wanted to sell his property, before he could again take it to market for that price, he would have to offer it to the tenants who currently live there. That would be a fantastic way to help solve this crisis, because again, it's just like right to buy. So even if like the Conservatives object to it, well, then you can just turn around and just go, well, hold on, how can you object to this when this is exactly like right to buy? So it continues. For many years, I'm not even going to try to pronounce it now. These apartments have offered an affordable means of housing and provided security, autonomy, and community for hundreds of thousands of people. But since the early 2000s, broader changes in the housing market and finance have put pressure on the system. The cooperative, like ours, has mostly been maintained by financial and social securities on which it was founded and are increasingly hard to come by. Like the capitals of our European neighbours, the private sector and the housing market in Copenhagen is in crisis. Housing prices have soared over the country in the past 20 years owing to the combination of tax reforms, mortgage liberalisation policies, home ownership incentives, and also driving up the costs of renting. And the increased demand for more affordable cooperative housing has been exacerbating problems of race and class-based exclusion in some cooperatives, which have come to a really sore on the international networks to find new tenants rather than the external waiting lists. There is also anecdotal evidence that the under-the-table payments are offered and accepted to secure cooperative shares. Again, like I say, not 100% perfect system, but again, stuff you could do to help to make sure that that doesn't happen. So you could put in laws that say, you're not allowed to discriminate someone on their race. We have these already for landlords that they're not allowed to do. So if we did bring in this system of like cooperative housing, there's no reason to say that law cannot be extended to this type of thing as well. So that might be a problem in Denmark, but if we do it here, then we can solve that problem instantly, right away. Also, the marketing reforms to the Anselborg system have itself further undermined the principles of what it was founded for, even if it led to the disruption of many cooperatives. Legislation that prevents boards from increasing the price of apartment above the founding amount has largely been repealed. And over the years, many cooperatives have voted to hike the value of shares, enriching the existing members while referring membership to more expense to the newcomers. There are also insurances where boards have inadvertently run their cooperative into the ground, owing to financial mismanagement in the absence of meaningful government protection. In recent years, cooperatives have even been seen as a promising investment opportunity for real estate companies, pension funds, and even financial institutions. The rapid transformation of the Anselberg system at large over the past 20 years suggests that alternative forms of housings in other cities would also indeed struggle to survive, as long as there are indeed powerful financial interests that can extract the ever-growing rents from the tenants and the price increases in the private housing sector. In other words, the experience in Copenhagen supports the economist Josh Ryland Collins' contention that Western Europe's housing crisis cannot be solved while housing remains primarily a financial asset, instead of a source of shelter. Again, something I've been saying for quite a while about the need to transferring from the idea that you buy a house as almost an investment. Again, it's something that we need to change as a society as a whole, but that is going to take a lot of time and a lot of effort to try and get through to people. The principles on which the first Anselberger was found and the sense of freedom that they provide are nevertheless worth fighting for. Not so long ago, I had lived in 10 different houses within the space of 5 years, sometimes moving for work or study, but mostly because the landlord had decided to up the rent to an unaffordable amount or even sell the apartment. And back then, my home was not something I had control over. But my housing cooperative in Copenhagen has provided me, has proved to me that it doesn't have to be this way. Housing can be and should be a path to joy and mental peace, to autonomy and community. These conditions are, and not the potential for financial extraction, should be at the heart for housing for everyone. And I completely agree. Obviously, they've talked about some of the problems this can create, but as I said, there are solutions to those problems. The discrimination problem can easily be sorted like that if we were to do it over here. Obviously, there are other measures as well you could very much take, but this is a potential solution to the housing crisis here in the UK of having cooperatively owned houses. So I would love to hear, especially, is there such a thing? Do you currently live in cooperative housing here in the UK? I would love to hear about your experience of that in the comments below. Or are you from Denmark and you currently live in one of these places, or you've had experience in living in these places? Like I say, I'd love to hear about your experiences. Like I say, comment down below about, tell me what it's like. Again, I'd love to hear both positive and negative, because again, it's worth knowing what these problems are, because again, then we can take steps to solve these problems, especially in the future, should we again go forward for this, because I think this is a fantastic idea that really could be solved on this. So as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all